you guys for joining us once again. This is the second episode of Behind the Culture with head coach Jim Flanery. Just an opportunity to show you a little bit more about how this program was built and some of the ins and outs that you may not be aware of within Creighton women's basketball. And Coach, thanks for joining us again. I know you've had the opportunity to change the set, but unfortunately we are not changing the host, so you still are stuck with me.
I'm okay with that, Glenn.
Last time we talked, we did a couple questions on the season and then a couple questions on the culture. We're going to stick to that format for at least the first several episodes, and today we're going to focus on culture first. And we talked a little bit about what your assistant coaches did behind the scenes, and today I want to give a little bit of light to some of the other members of your staff. One of the things people may not realize is, in addition to your players sticking around, your staff has stuck around. You've had largely the same staff. Occasional changes on assistant coaches, which we'll talk about it at some point. The Jim Flanery tree. Just briefly to think about that, you've got the head coach at Harvard, Kerry Moore. You've got the head coach at Cal Baptist, who was on your staff. You've got the head coach at Northern Iowa, all who were under the learning tree of Jim Flanery. But today I want to focus on some of the people who are still here, specifically your director of operations, Jenny Vickers, and your strength coach, Brad Schmidt. Both have been here over 12 years, and you've unfortunately had to have been stuck and saddled with myself for 12 years as well. We talked about this at one point. You've had 2 SIDs in 25 years, whereas we talk about some of the other coaches in the Big East, they've had 8 in 12 years. So tell me a little bit about what Jenny does and what she brings to this program.
Yeah, well, Jenny's super sharp. I mean, she went to school here, played for us, and I know she would be okay with me telling people that she didn't have success as a Division I basketball player because she was highly athletic. She had success as a basketball player because she was disciplined, she worked hard, and she knew what she could do and she knew what she couldn't do, and just a really cerebral player. And because of that, she had success. She was very unselfish as a player. So some of those same attributes shine through in her role as director of ops. She's comfortable being behind the scenes. She's super detail oriented. She's proactive when it comes to maybe thinking about troubleshooting issues that are potentially going to happen. And I think, when we got in the Big East and we had to start planning road trips to the Northeast in the middle of winter, you have to have a plan B, and she's really good at saying, okay, this is what I'm thinking. If this happens, then we can do this, and just she's really good that way. And when you have someone like that, you get to relax and do what you do best, or what I think maybe I do better. And some of our coaches, when you don't have to constantly second guess whether things are going to get done behind the scenes, you can kind of focus on the things that you're best at. And I think that's her greatest attribute, is she relieves tension of the unknown, the things that maybe aren't going to pop up. So an example would be, the other day when we were busing from our hotel to Seton Hall, our bus driver got lost. And, Jenny had the address plugged in her phone from the beginning and said, okay, here's what my phone's telling me. And, now we still were a little delayed getting there, but my God, if we, his GPS was telling him one thing, and, I'm not sure we make it to the arena in the time that we did without Jenny. So she's just really good at those sorts of things. Making decisions that are going to be in the best interest of the players, where we're going to eat, what are we going to eat, what might we want to do on a road trip for fun, or for educational purposes, and those things matter. The student athlete satisfaction is greater because of the detail that Jenny puts in, but she's super steady. And she was a coach. She was a full-time coach doing recruiting and scouting and all that stuff. And after she had a couple kids, the recruiting piece just wasn't as exciting to her, given her family obligations and desires. So she took herself off the road by becoming our director of ops, and we're the better for it. And then, when you look at what Brad Schmidt has meant to our program as a strength coach over the last dozen or more years, I mean, he's just, again, high energy, professional, relates really well to student athletes, pushes them, but in a way that doesn't offend them, because he'll say sometimes, hey, they didn't have the energy, I had to get on them a little bit, or they were really good today. So he's really good with feedback for both staff and players, because nowadays players want more input than ever. They're more, they're more into what do my numbers say in terms of where, how well have I recovered, and what's my heart rate, and where's the zone that I'm supposed to be in, and they want all those numbers, and he's really good about that. And again, just real steady, hard worker. And we've just been fortunate to have had him, and he's works with volleyball as well, and the success that volleyball's had. So I think he's a big part of the success. And then finally, Glenn, around to you, you're really good at managing my what's required of me, giving me direction, because again, as a head coach, I can get scattered, as you may know, in season. I mean, I'm not the detailed guy or person that Jenny is. So it's just nice to have somebody who can remind me of the things that I need to do, and certainly you're good there. You have good relationships throughout the league and on campus, and those things matter, in your role. The relationship piece matters, because I think if you don't have those within the media or within the league, then things get harder, and those things are made easy by the relationships that you have. So that's all I'm going to compliment you. I'm not going to go as in-depth as I did with Jenny and Brad, but I think support staff is super important. I think anybody who doesn't understand that, those positions and people who are doing a good job in those positions really matter, because they take a lot of stress. Coaches are stressed, and the less stress that we have, particularly in season, the better we're going to operate, the better our student athletes are going to operate, and I think that's a big piece.
I would be remiss if I didn't mention our athletic training group, and we've had a few different athletic trainers over the years, but in specific, I think that it's important. When we had the Elite Eight run, I felt like one of the keys that's never mentioned was the relationship, then the ability that Petra Knight was able to come in. That was her first year, and she connected immediately with the staff. She connected immediately with the student athletes. That's not to denigrate any of our previous athletic trainers. They also did an excellent job, but Petra was the right fit at the right time, and she worked so well with Brad. And Nick has come in and done an excellent job. I thought it was really valuable for him to go to Spain and Greece with the team and connect with them at that particular point. Sometimes you mentioned that Europe trip may have been something you wanted to do with a younger group, but it allowed Nick to get involved. It allowed Mike Jewett to get involved and connect with his team.
Absolutely, yeah. Nick, I didn't mention him because he hasn't been here as long, but he's only been here a matter of months, but he's fit in really seamlessly. Hard worker, good communicator, student athlete friendly, push, similar to Brad. He's going to push him and make him uncomfortable here and there, but they know that he has their best interests at heart. And like you said, I think he works really well with Brad. And boy, the athletic training position has never been more important, because our players have been playing basketball year round from the time they're 9 or 10 or 11 years old in a lot of cases. And so they have more injury history than ever before. They have more nagging injuries or pains than they've ever had before. And so that athletic training position is super important, and it's important that person works well with your strength coach and with the staff and the student athletes, and Nick has done a really good job in his short time here.
The last piece I want to ask you about is often in the coaching field we talk about time management, specifically in the NFL, but time management or situation management. In our team, Jenny does an excellent job of knowing exactly how many timeouts you had, who's on the court. What else does she give to you in game?
Well, she can. We recently changed the rules where now everybody can coach in game, and there's just some things that she may see, even though she's not involved in game planning or strategy as much as the other coaches. Just by virtue of having been with me for as long as she's been with, there's some things that she'll notice maybe. But like you said, just timeouts. What is the other team? What's the lineup of the other team coming out of the timeout, and those sorts of things matter. How much time's on the clock at halftime? In addition to all the things, both pre and post game that you don't have to worry about because you have Jenny. Like I said, just getting to the gym and our practice times, that's important. Like, hey, we can get on at this time, or let's get there a little early because we can maybe get on earlier. And those things matter in the big scheme. And I think if you look at our road record the last 3 years, Mr. Identifying that we've won more road games than anybody in the country the last 3 years. Certainly that has a lot to do with the maturity of our student athletes and the talent of our team, but it also has to do with how Jenny and others manage the travel piece. Because if we, it's hard enough to, like I said earlier, to travel in the Northeast with weather. But if you have one extra thing go wrong that's overlooked, then it gets harder to win. And we haven't had we've had challenges, but challenges are fine. But sometimes when they add up, it gets harder to win. That's one of the reasons it's hard to win on the road. It's not just that the other team has more people cheering for them on the game. It's that it's harder to travel and be in a hotel, and there's just a comfort level that you have when somebody's really good at that.
Let's shift gears into this season. Another road victory, defeating Seton Hall, and got them 72 to 64. The oddity in the numbers piece is to me, the last two games previously it was 72 to 65, and to be so close is just one of those statistical oddities. But the game itself, it's followed a similar path. We got up to a 17-point lead early in the third quarter. It was trimmed all the way back to a 2-point game, and despite that, the crowd, there was only 920 fans, but it was a good crowd, good atmosphere, and they were clearly behind the Pirates. But instead of wiltering, your team stepped up in the moment, specifically Morgan Molly, draining back-to-back threes to push that lead back out to an 8-point edge and to give you some momentum as the game went on. What can you say about what Morgan did and how your team is able to respond? Let's leave aside the fact that the 17-point lead got dwindled to 2.
Yeah, just some of the same things I said, just maturity, being able to kind of compartmentalize, hey, we got to win this possession, or we got to have a good possession, whether the ball goes in or not. And I think, Morgan's a really confident player. She's a shot maker of extraordinary talent, and she's put the time in to believe that she's made for that moment, and I think that's a huge piece of it. And Lauren's that way too. As are others. It's not just those two, but obviously those two stand out. But yeah, Morgan hit. The first shot was huge because I felt like the momentum. When the lead gets down to 2, now if you don't score, they can take the lead. And I just think we had a good possession. We moved the ball. Lauren got in the lane, kicked it to Molly, and Molly did the right thing and made the extra. Molly maybe could have shot it, but Morgan had a better shot on a one extra pass. And I think Morgan thought it was off because she landed and she went to go grab it. It looked like she went to offensive rebound, which is not normally she'll stay with her shot longer. But she kind of came down and lunged forward, but it went in. And then the next one probably was a little easier just because she'd just seen one go in. And we had a 5-point lead, which is a little bit less, a little less stress. But, we executed. And like you said, even though the crowd wasn't that big, our players like playing there. It's a small environment, but it gets loud, and clearly they had the momentum. But again, whether the shot goes in or not, you want a good possession. I felt like we had that good possession, and then the second one we kind of milked the clock a little. The possession wasn't as good, but again, Morgan had just seen the ball go in, so she's clutch when she's going. There are a few people that are more fun to watch, and so yeah, I mean we've got to get better at maintaining a lead so that it doesn't have to come down to that, because you're not, the bottom line is you're not always gonna when the league gets that low, the ball going in or not is a little bit more unpredictable, and so there's some things that we need to clean up, is what I'm saying.
Now you've got a little bit of time off. You don't play until next Saturday, and then you play DePaul. What about DePaul themselves has surprised you? DePaul was one of the teams that was expected to take a step back, and playing the season without Doug Bruno possibly. Doug has had some medical issues, and he hasn't been able to coach the team throughout at least the first portion of the season. What surprises you about the Blue Demons?
Well, they've hung in there. They played a really tough non-conference schedule. I mean, they played, Texas, Kansas State, Oklahoma. Those are three top 12 teams, plus a lot of other good teams, Michigan State and Green Bay and Princeton. And so they probably played a schedule that was a little tougher than with the returners they had. I felt like that's a really tough schedule. But they've hung in there, and now they're 4-1 in the league, which I think, so they've gotten better. I think, maybe the uncertainty of not having Doug, made it hard for them to get better for a little bit of time, but clearly they're on track. Jory Allen, their sixth-year senior post player, she's a warrior. Like, she plays really hard. It's easy to admire how hard she plays, and just a really good player, good ambassador for our league. And they've added a couple pieces. Taylor Johnson Matthews Johnson, who plays on the wing, has been a really good scorer for them. Very dynamic wing player. They got a really solid 4 player, and then I think their defense has gotten better. I mean, just watching them earlier in the year, versus the last week or so, I feel like they're guarding better. And when you win, I think sometimes you do the little things a little bit better, and I think that they're a team that's on a little bit of a roll. Now they play at Villanova before they come here, but they're 4-1 in the league, and I think it'll be a challenge, much more so maybe than if I looked at their scores and the way they were playing 3 weeks ago.
Well, that'll do it for our second episode. Next week, we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the roles that don't get enough attention. Specifically, we're going to talk about student managers. We've had some very strong student managers over the years, and we'll talk a little bit about that in our next week. Thank you guys for listening. Behind the Culture with Creighton head coach Jim Flanery.